Hi all, we are bigdatahandson.com. Our website bigdatahandson.com. You can visit our website. Actually, this is a reshoot video because part 5 already taken, but we missed the recording, so we are reshooting it. So previously taken videos you can find it in our YouTube channel bigdatahandson.com. So from part 8 we have completed. So this part is part 5. We are reshooting it. So if you have any doubts, you can message it in this number 978988844, or you can send email through support@bigdatahanson.com email address. Uh, Today is a part 5 video. So we cover control structures and if class, if else, and loops, while loop and for loop. So actually this we are taking 50 sessions on artificial intelligence. So day 1 to day 3 we covered statistics and probability, and from day 4 only we started Python. Day 4 we covered introduction and the data types, variable operators. This part is day 5. Part 5 we covered control structure, if class, loops and jump statements. Okay. And yeah, from 4 to 14 we have Python videos, Python, these all. Okay. And then after Python we have from day 15 to day 29 we cover machine learning. And then from day 30 to day 40 we cover deep learning. And remaining part is sorry, actually 41 and 42 are natural language processing, and then 43 to 50 that is the reinforcement learning. Okay. So now we'll continue the session on part 5. Let me start Visual Studio Code. This is the editor which you are going to use. If you don't have the editor, you can download it from Google. uh, it is a lightweight IDE for Python. So Visual Studio, just you can go to this link code.visualstudio.com, download. So here you can find for various operating systems you can find the installation file. Then you can download the file and then install it. Okay. Now we are in the same environment. Now let me create a file. Let's say, okay. So previously what we covered, that is tokens. So what are tokens? Tokens are nothing but the Python separates or understand the code on a way like it separates as a components. That is called a tokens. Okay. The tokens are identifiers. We already know that identifiers are variable names, class names and functions names. That is identifiers to identify a variable or class variable, that is. Okay. And then we have keywords. Keywords, what keywords are? A words that has a meaning. Okay, has a meaning in Python. That are keywords. Only the interpreter only will understand the words. Okay. And then what we have operators. We have already seen that operators, various type of operators in Python. Okay. And then we have delimiters. Delimiters are nothing but symbols like brackets or square brackets, curly brackets, or the expressions like percentile and at these are the delimiters. Okay. And then what we have, okay, that's it. So these are the tokens we have seen yesterday. Now we'll see control structures. Okay, control structures are will control the code execution. Okay, if you let's say which line of code I need to run will determine these control structures. Okay, control structure. The control structures are structure. Let's say structures. Control structures are sequence, sequence and alternative or branching, alternative or branching, and then the other section is iterative or looping, iterative or looping. Okay, these are the control structures in Python. So let me see. Let's see one by one. What are the sequence? Sequence are nothing but the lines which we are executing na, normally. Like for example, print hello world and then print hi. These are the sequence execution. That means the first line will be executed and then the second line will be executed. Like that, it will sequentially execute line by line. That is called a sequence control structure. Okay, and then what we have, alternative or branching. So before that, let me show you. We have seen yesterday how to give output using this print function. You know, print is a function which will give you the output whatever values we are giving inside the function, right? So how to get input from user. Okay, so these two things, output and input, is very important in all the languages, not only in Python. We all the languages it is commonly used input and output. Okay, for input, to get an input from user, we have a function called input. So name itself input. Okay, so let me give an example by the, uh, the interactive shell. Okay, I will open the interactive shell and then we'll give you the example. For example, input function, I'm just typing input brackets, that's it. Okay, if I give enter, you can see the cursor, it's waiting here now. So because it is waiting for the user input, it is waiting for the user input. Let's say I'm typing hi, how are you? This is the input. Okay, and then it's just printing what I have given the input. Okay, you can store the input in a variable. Just let's say var is a variable. Okay, now I can store this value inside a variable. Okay, now the value is inside the variable var. Okay, now if I call the var, it will give you me the value. Okay, that's it. So this is how we can get an input from user. Okay, let's say I'm having an n number equal to input. Okay, n equal to input I'm giving. Okay, so now let me just comment this all lines. uh, okay, now let's run. To run this code, we can press the F5 button. If you press the F5 button, it will run this code. It will ask you what file is it. It is Python file. Then it will start the debugging. Okay, actually the cursor is waiting here. Okay, now I can type some values. Okay, let's say numbers I'm typing. Okay, so how the user knows what input I need to give? I can give whatever I want, no, but specifically let's say I'm just printing the type of the in variable. I'm just inputting the sorry, I'm just asking the input, and then printing the type of the variable n. Okay, now if I run this, so I'm just typing number. Okay, you can see that. So now what type it is giving me? Class str. It is giving me str. Okay, why? Is because uh, all the inputs which the user gives, all the values which the user gives, the input function will take as an str. Okay, if I give number or whatever I give, it is considered as a string. Okay, str only, and then only you need to convert. Okay, so we'll see that part, the typecasting also. So before that, uh, how the user know what input I need to give? I can ask age. Maybe the age is given here. No, age is given here. So how the user know I need to give my age? Okay, my age as an input. Okay, how the user knows? So we need to tell the user, type this type of values. You want to type your age, you want to type your name. Okay, you want to type some numbers. Okay, so we need to give a message for the user. Right, to give it a message, you can pass some messages in the brackets of the input function. You can see the prompt here, no? So the prompt says, it has a variable, sorry, the parameter called prompt. For that parameter we need to give the value. For example, I'm giving the message as enter your age. Right, enter your age. It's showing the age colon. Why it's showing me in the drop down is because I have installed in my system Kite. Kite is a very useful software for if you are writing coding na, it will show the auto compilation. So whatever I'm typing here, if I say pri, so it will show me the available options in the drop down. Okay, so that's what it is actually trained in my coding. So what value I'm just typing now? If I'm giving age here, if I say enter your, and then it will show me some options like enter your time and enter your age. So i can uh, I can select the age. Okay, so now if I run this file, it will show me the message. So here, now it is showing me the message. Before it doesn't show any messages. So the user don't know what value, what type of value I need to enter. So now they can understand, okay, I need to type my age. Right, now they will enter their age. Right, so now we'll come to the uh, problem, the type problem. So the input always get the input as a string. What if I want to convert the age into the str, the string into integer? That comes under typecasting. Right, type, sorry, that is typecasting. So in typecasting we have two types: explicit and implicit. Implicit means it will convert automatically. Okay, inside the code, if you are writing something like I'm multiplying an integer with float, of course the uh, the output will be a type of float, so it is converting the type actually. So that is implicit conversion. So the explicit conversion is the conversion which the user does. I'm explicitly converting the type. So the age is now class str. So this is a string type of data. Now I need to convert the age into what? I need to convert the age into integer. Okay, to convert, to typecast that, How you need to do is you need to use a function. If you want to convert that into integer, we have a function called int, right? Int. Inside you need to give the brackets. Inside the brackets you need to give a data. So the value, the value is from input, right? The value is coming from input, and then it will convert into integer. Now the age will be integer. If I check the age, the type of age, so see here, class int, it belongs to integer class. Now I am explicitly converting the type. To convert float, we have float function. To convert str, we have str function. To convert boolean, we have boolean function, bool. Like that, the function will be useful for you to convert the types explicitly. Okay, now we'll come to the concept alternative or branching control structure. Okay, in alternative or branching, we have three types of uh, control structures, that is simple if, and if else, and the third type is if, elif, sorry, elif and else. These are the three type of alternate branching structures. Okay, simple if, and if else, and if else. Okay, so let's see simple if class is used for the conditions. Okay, let's say I want to run this particular line when the condition goes true. Okay, when the condition only the it is giving me true, then only this line will be executed. Okay, in other languages we have the same concept, like if we have, and then we'll do some the syntax I'm telling, right? And we give the condition here, right? And we give brackets, the curly brackets. Okay, this is the type of syntax in other languages. In Python, what the syntax is, if the same keyword and then the condition, and needs to give the colon and give enter. So the four spaces after the four spaces only the cursor will white, because in Python we have a concept of indentation. Indentation is nothing but uh, to denote the block. To denote a block, we have a space. Okay, in other languages, like we have curly brackets, right? In Python we have spaces. Okay, normal spaces. So this space is telling us that this line, like for example print here, this line is belongs to this block. Okay, that's what the use of indentation here. So this is the syntax, so we already know that. Now let's implement it. Let's say I'm asking the age, right? I'm asking the age input. Now let's put a condition. If the keyword and then the condition, what condition I need to give? The condition will be like a boolean condition. Okay, it should be a boolean condition. Okay, so for example, we can say if age is greater than or equal to 18, if the age is greater than or equal to 18, then only you are eligible for voting. Right, voting. Okay, so now let's run this code. Just simply we are giving the if and the space, and then we are giving the condition. The colon is very important here. Why? Because colon only denotes the block. Okay, after the colon, if you press enter, that will be in after four spaces. Normally we have four spaces for indentation. Okay, enter your age. If I give 18, so you are eligible for voting. It is saying me eligible for voting. If I give too less, If I give 17, nothing is happening, right? Nothing is happening. uh, so this block is running when the condition goes true. What if the condition goes false? So for that we have if else. If else block. If else block is nothing but if the condition is true, then run this block, or if the condition is false, then run the else block. Okay, just give else colon. So here we have some codes. Okay, some lines of codes here we can have. So now, so enter your age. I'm saying 16, so you're not eligible for voting. So we have if and else block here. Okay, right. So now we have seen the two alternative structures. So before that, I will just see some practice problems in the if else. Okay, we'll see some practice problems. So these are the practice problems, hands-on experience. So now the first is write a program to check whether the given character is vowel or not. Okay, it's a very simple one. So the vowels are we know that a e I o u. Now it can be a lowercase letter or it can be uppercase letter, right? E I o u. These are the vowels. Now I need to take input from user, and then I need to check whether that is a vowel or not. Okay, so let's input from user. Let's take input from user. Ch the character equal to input, enter a char, let's say. Now I need to check whether the ch, now let's say the ch is inside the ch we have e. Okay, I need to check if the e is inside the a e I o u. Okay, it is a vowel or not. To check that, we have a method. The condition goes like this: if ch the character, let's say I can check like this also. If ch equal to e, or if ch uh, equal to a, I can do like this, but it will be complex. So instead of this, what we can do, we can have a string like consist of all the vowels a e I o u, right? So I need to check whether this character in the string. Okay, so for that, what type of operator we can use? We have already seen that membership operator. What is membership operator? Membership operator is in operator. Okay, in is an operator which will check whether this substring is inside this object or not. Okay, that's it. If it is in the sequence, then that is a vowel, or else that's not a vowel. Okay, let me run this code. Now it is asking enter a char. I'm giving e and it's giving me vowel. It is a vowel. If I give another example, give different value, enter a char. I'm giving q. Q is not a vowel. Okay. So we have seen simple if and simple if else. Now we'll see if elif else. So before seeing the elif part, we'll see nested if class. What is nested if class? An if class inside the if block or another else block, okay, right? uh, that is nested if block. That means you will have, let's say for example, n equal to 3, let's say. If the n is greater than 10, that means that is greater than 10, right? 10. If that is less than, that means else, it comes in else block, right? If the condition goes false, it comes in else block. Now inside this else block also we can have a condition, we can have an if class. Okay, now the condition is like, if the n is greater than 5, print uh, greater than 5, right? If the else block goes wrong here, it will come here. And now we can print less than 5. Else, sorry. So the nested if else block is like this only. Okay, we have if the condition fails, it comes in here else block, and inside the else block we are having another condition. So uh, we can write these blocks simply. I'm just removing the spaces. Let's see what happens. I'm removing the column, I'm removing the e, I'm removing the s. So now what it becomes? It becomes elif. Okay, this is the use of elif block. The expansion of elif is nothing but else if, right? In other languages we usually use else if. In Python we have elif. Okay, so what elif is doing now is just, if the if block condition is goes fails, then it will check for another condition that is in the elif block. Okay, and then if that condition also fails, then it will come in the else block. Okay, and for this if else we have some conditions. The condition is if should be the first one. So you need to you must have the if block. Okay, and then the elif block, you can have multiple elif blocks, you can have more than one. Okay, you can have multiple elif blocks, but the else block should be in the last one. You can have without else block also. Okay, but if you have else block, it should be in the last one, in the last one. So this is a if elif else blocks. So we have seen the alternative or branching control structure. Now let's see iterative or looping. Okay, before that we have another problem statement. Using if else elif statement, check smallest of three numbers. Okay, smallest of three numbers we need to check. uh, we'll comment this all. Okay, now we'll see, for example, we have a variable, comma b variable and c variable. These three are the numbers. Okay, we have three numbers. For these three numbers, we'll give three values. For A, we have 20. For B, we have 40. For C, we have 20. Okay. Now I need to check what is the smallest value of these three numbers. Okay. Using the if else blocks. Okay. Okay. Now first, let me put the condition. What I'm going to do is I'm going to check the A first. Okay. I'm going to check A with these two numbers. If the A is small or not. If A is less than B and A is less than C, that means now A is the smallest one. So we can print A here. Okay. If the A is less than B and A is less than C, now the A is smallest one. We can print A. So if the condition fails, then it will come in what? In elif block. So in elif block, what we have? So understand this one. So if this condition fails, that means A should be a greater value. Okay, A should be greater than B or it can greater than C. Now we'll check for the condition. If this condition fails, that means A will not a smallest number. So we know that we uh, taking that is a larger number. Now we'll check for B and C. If the B is C, sorry, if the B is less than C, that means C is the smallest one. Sorry, B is the smallest one. Okay, first we are checking for A for using both values. If this condition fails, A should be a larger value. And now we check for B and C. If the B is less than C, that means B is the smallest one. If this condition also fails, that means we conclude that C is the smallest one. Okay, that comes in the else block. If the both conditions, the if condition and if condition fails, that means C is the smallest value. Okay, now let's run this. So now we have 10. So we find the smallest value among these three values. Okay, now let's see another problem. Write a program to check if a number is positive, negative, or zero. We need to check whether that is a negative value or positive value or zero. So this also has three conditions. Okay, so let me take a number randomly like 67. If it is a positive or negative, like okay, or else we can input from user itself. Right, that may be a good choice. Enter a number. Okay, now we have the number in n. Now we need to check the condition. What are the conditions? If the condition is positive or not, or negative or zero. So let me check whether the number is positive. Greater than zero means that is a positive number. Okay, print positive number. Now if the condition fails, it will come in elif block. Okay, in this elif block we are having the condition like n less than 0. N less than 0 means that should be a negative value. Negative number. If this both condition fails, then that is 0. 0. Okay, now let's run this. So n is starting for enter a number. If I say 10 is a positive number, it is saying positive number. If I run another time, -2, that is a negative number. Okay, if I input 0, 0 here, it's saying 0. Okay, so we have done the problem. Okay, these are the examples of if else. Now let's move on to the uh, other control structure. The next control structure is iterative or looping. So for iterating or looping, uh, what we have is wait. So in iterative and looping statements, we have in Python we have two types of loops. That is, one is while loop. We know that all other languages we have the loop, common loop, that is while loop, and then we have for loop. So in Python for loop, that is different from other languages for loops, because it is a different type of for loop. Actually, the syntax is different from other languages. Okay, the performance is so different. Now let's create another file named loops, let's say. Okay, so now we'll see loops. Loops are, one is while loop and for loop. For loop. Okay, let's see. First we'll see while loop. Okay, in while loop, you need to be aware of three conditions, three things, let's say, not conditions, three things. One is initializing a variable. Okay, this variable will control your loop. So why that is, I will tell you that later. We'll see that initializing a variable. And then the second thing is the condition, and the third thing is increment the initialized variable. What we have initialized, no, the variable we need to increment. So these three things we need to beware of. Now for the syntax for while loop, it is very simple. We have a keyword while, and then space, then put the condition here. Okay, and then column, of course, to denote a block, it must to put the colon here. Okay, and then we can start typing the whatever you want. Okay, first we'll see initializing a variable, the first step. Initializing a variable, let's say I equal to 0. Okay, so this is the initialize, we have initialized the variable as 0. Now then what we have, we have condition. Condition goes here, right? Let's say if I is less than or equal to 10. Okay, if I is less than or equal to 10, this is the condition. And then what we have increment, the third step. Okay, increment goes in the inside the loop. What increment means, uh, every time you need to update the I value. Why? Is because we are using the I in the condition. If you didn't increment, no, what will happen, the loop will run infinitely. Okay, so it is important to increment the value, so plus equal to 1. Okay, you can say print I. Now this is a simple code in for while loop. Let's run this. It will print 0 to 10 values. That's it, very simple, na? So in other languages also we do the same thing, increment, initializing a variable, and we have the conditions, and then we increment the value inside the loop, right? Okay, now let's see some problem statements. Write a program to display Fibonacci series. Okay, Fibonacci series. Let's see the Fibonacci series using while loop, we'll see. Okay, so Fibonacci series goes like this. It has an initial value 0 and 1, and then it will you need to add these two values, 0 plus 1, and then the result is 1. and after that we need to add 0 1 plus 1, the result is 2, and then you need to add 1 plus 2, the result is 3. Okay, and then 2 plus 3, 5. So like it goes on. Okay, this is the Fibonacci series. For that we'll code for that. So up to n terms, it's saying up to n terms. So n will be an input from the user only. Okay, enter enter a number, let's say. Now up to n terms we need to do. So let's start with 0, the while loop initialization variable, and the condition is while I less than or equal to n. Okay, so this time, okay, number of times you need to run this loop. Okay, and then we'll increment the I value. Okay, now we have set up the while loop. Then you need to do the operation of the Fibonacci series. So we'll have what we'll do, we'll take an initial two values, fib 0 equal to 0 and fib 1 equal to 1. Let's take this initial two values. Okay, and then inside what we'll do, we'll have the variable called fib. So in fib what we'll do, we'll add these two values, fib 0 and fib 1. Okay, so the result will print here. Okay, fib will print the fib here. After printing this, what you need to do is you need to change the values. Fib z1 will become fib, sorry, first we'll change the fib 0. Fib 0 will become fib 1 and fib 1 will become fib. Why? Is because I'm just swapping the values. Okay, so initially 0 and 1 is the value, and after that we'll add up these two values. Now this one will become fib 0 and the result will become fib 1. So like that the in terms will go on. So now we have the uh, uh, done the coding. Let's run this. Enter a number, I will say 10. Okay, it's saying 1 2 3 5 8. Where's the first two elements is there, but we are not printed the first two elements, and also it is printing horizontally, we want vertically. Okay, so to do that, what we can do is print the fib 0 and fib 1, and then to make this multi-line printed values, on a single line, what you can do is in the print function we have a variable. You can see end here, no? End is a variable. The default one is slash n means new line. That's why the printed values are coming new lines. Okay, if I change the value to end equal to, let's say, space I'm giving here. Okay, then what will happen, it will separate the values by the space, not the new line. So it will separate the values by spaces. So then entering the number 10. So now it is showing the 10 values, right? Okay, this is how the Fibonacci series goes on. Now we have done the for loop, then we see, sorry, while loop we have done. Now we'll see for loop. Okay, so in other languages for loop will be a different one, but in Python the for loop will work only on a sequence type of data. Sequence data types, for example a string is a sequence data type. Okay, in for loop the concept of looping is called iterative. Okay, you can call it iterative. That means it will iterate through the sequence. The for loop will iterate through the sequence. The syntax for loop is for keyword space a variable. Okay, a variable here, and then in, and then we have the sequence or the sequence data types like a string, list, tuple, that are sequence data types. So what will happen in the for loop, let's say the string is a sequence, no, then The h is the first element. The h will be assigned to the variable. Okay, like this it will assign all the it will iterate through the sequence. Okay, in other languages it will be different. In other languages actually it is same as for while loop. Actually we'll have like for example for we'll initialize a variable I equal to 0. We'll having a condition I less than or equal to 10, and we'll uh, what we'll do, we'll increment the value, right? I plus plus. This is how in other languages it goes on, but in for loop is not the case. It works, the for loop will works only on sequence type of data. So let's see some example. For ch is a character in the sequence. What sequence? Let's say hello world. Hello world is the sequence here. So now I am printing the ch. So what will be the output? The output will be that it will print each and every characters in the string one by one. So now see here, h e l l o space w o r l r d, like, so it is printing, right? Sorry, world. Okay, so we have the sequence of strings, but what about integers? How can I create a sequence of integers? To create a sequence of integer, for example, I need to print 0 to 10 values using for loop. How can I do? You need to create a sequence before that. So to create a sequence of integers, we have a function called range in Python. The range will give you the sequence of numbers. Okay, in that range you need to give three parameters. One is start is the starting value, let's say 0, and a stop value. Okay, and then stop, and then we have step value. These three values will be for the parameters are for range. Okay, the start is the starting value and the stop is the end value. Actually the range will not work for the end value. Actually it will be end minus 1, stop minus 1, and then the step is an increment value. Okay, okay, now let's see for example. For I in range, the examples like range of 0 comma 10, it will give me the value 0 to 9 only. Okay, 0 to 9, this example will give you. And if you have a range 0 to 10, but if you have the third parameter 2, what will happen? It will give you the result like 0 comma 2 comma 4 comma 6 8, like this will be the result. Okay, or else you can give just a single parameter, the stop value only, let's say 10. So the result will be as same as this one, because defaultly the start value is 0. Okay, now these are the examples. Let's see uh, the implementation. Range of, let's say, 0 comma 10, and then print the I value. Okay, now I'm running this program. Now it is printing me 0 to 10 values. Sorry, not 10 actually. The stop value will be excluded. 10 will be excluded. Till 9 only it will give you the result. Okay, so this is an example of for loop. It will work on only the sequence. So now let's see some problem statements. Okay, the fifth one, write a program to display sum of natural numbers up to n. Okay, up to n we need to sum all the values. let's say n equal to will will input from the user. Okay, enter a number. So till n you need to add the values, sum all the values. So for that, I will take a variable. Yes, initially that will be 0. That is the sum result. Okay, we're going to add using the s variable only. So now let me create a loop until till n values. Okay, for I in range of n values up to n. Up to n means it will not it is excluding the n value, so you need to increment it by 1. Why is because it will exclude the n. If the n is 10, no, it will only give you until 9. If you add 1 plus 1, that means you are including the n also. If the value is for n is 10, that means we are running the loop for 11. So the range will understand like till 10 I need to loop through. So now we have the I value. Now we need to increment the sum with I. So the I value will be add up to the yes sum value. So before first I will be 0, so we'll add 0 to s, and then I will 1, we'll add 1, and then 2, and then 3, like it goes on until n values. After that we can print the s sum of the values. Okay, not this one. Now it is asking enter a number. If we want to find the sum of 100 natural numbers, that is 5050. Now let's move on to the next problem statement. Write a program to check if the given number is a palindrome or not. Okay, palindrome numbers are nothing but like, let's say we are having 1 to 1. If you reverse the value, it will be the same 1 to 1. Let's say for string we have, for example, Malayalam. If you reverse it, that will be the same. Okay, this is the palindrome. So we need to check whether the number is palindrome or not. Okay, we'll do with using while loop. Okay, we'll do with while loop. Okay, so we'll ask a number. The number is num, let's say. So now we need to let's say I'm assigning the number into temp variable, because we'll reverse the number actually. So now the original number will change. So I'm temporarily storing the number into the different variable, so that we can after the reverse operation, then we'll check whether the reversed one is equal to the original one. Okay, now what we can do is we put a while loop. The condition is if the num is greater than 0. If the num is greater than 0, so in other languages we do the same thing what now I'm going to do. So we have three steps for reversing a number. One is you need to find the last number, that is digit. To find the last digit, you need to uh, divide 10. Okay, divide by 10. Why I'm giving modulo is because the remainder will be the last digit. Okay, the remainder will be the last digit. Now we have the last digit. What we need to do is we need to uh, let's take a variable called rev equal to 0. You need to add the last digit to the reverse variable. Okay, now we'll add the reversed variable 10 plus the digit. You need to add this digit to the variable rev. Okay, so now this is the second step. The third step is, after this you need to divide it by the number, you need to divide it by 10. Okay, and you need to divide the number with 10. So why I'm giving double slash is because it is a integer division. Okay, okay, these are operations you need to do. That's it. After this you will get a reversed number, a rev in the rev variable. Now we need to check whether the temp is equal to rev. If that is the both value is same, that means the number is palindrome. Else not palindrome. Okay, now let's run this code. Not this one. So now it is asking enter a number. Let's give 1 to 1. So it is a palindrome, it's saying. Okay, now our code is working, and this code is for checking whether the number is palindrome or not. Now let's see for next example. Write a program to print the following pattern. So this pattern we need to print. Okay, so for printing the pattern, so I will just input the size, get input the size from the user, enter the pattern size. Okay, so for this size we need to create the pattern. So we have 5 rows and 5 columns. The columns are just decreasing. Okay, so let's create a for loop for I in a range of the size, uh, okay, and then because the column is now decreasing, so what I will do, I will take parameter, I will take a variable z, sorry, j, and then assign the value of size. Okay, so now the j is what the size is given from the user. So let's say 5. Now the j is 5. Okay, now here the magic happens. Now I'm going to multiply the star with the j value. Okay, and after that I will decrease the j value, because every time the column value is decreasing. Now first is 5 and then 4 and then 3 2 1, like that. So this is how we'll do. Now I'm running the program. Enter a number, let's say 5. Sorry, pattern size is 5, so it is printing the pattern, right? Okay, we done it. Okay, and then last one, 8. Write a program to check if the year is leap year or not. Let me first ask the user to input a year, enter year. So for checking the leap year, it should pass some conditions. Year should be evenly divisible by 4. Okay, and it needs to be evenly divisible by 400, but not the 100. Okay, it needs to evenly divide by 400 and not the 100. So we give not equal to here, not equal to 0 here. Okay, this condition, if the condition true, then that is a leap year. If not, that is not a leap year. That's it. enter year 2000. 2000 is a leap year, so it's working properly. So now we came to the end. So let's give the ending. So we are bigdatahandson.com, our website bigdatahandson.com. If you have any doubts, you can message in this number 978988844, or else you can email through this support at bigdatahandson.com. The previous videos you can find it in our YouTube channel bigdatahandson.com. All the videos are uploaded here. This video will be uploaded as soon as possible. Okay, thank you all. We'll see tomorrow.